Hi, I'm Norbert. Thank you for watching this video about the 3151 terminal from IBM. In the next hour or so I will tell you a little bit about this interesting device, and I will show you what I did to connect it to an IBM mainframe computer. Before I start, let me quickly tell you the story about how I got my 3151. It was last year at the Vintage Computer Festival in Munich, where they have a flea market every year, where I saw this keyboard. I immediately identified it as an IBM Model M keyboard. You know, that's a mechanical keyboard with a really great feeling to type, and you hear already the clicky sound it makes. And I was really interested to buy this keyboard and then connect it to my PC. So I asked the seller what's the price for this keyboard, but the seller told me, well, it's not this keyboard that he's actually selling, but it's a whole terminal. So he showed me also the monitor that belongs to the keyboard, and he told me this is an IBM 3151 ASCII terminal, and he's only selling the whole package. So yeah, I thought, well, an ASCII terminal, that's quite boring. And I asked him what's the price. So he said, well, it's 70 euros for everything. Yeah, then I thought a little bit, but then I considered that 70 euro is not very much money. And yeah, so I took everything and thought I can always throw away the monitor when I'm at home. But back at home, I had a little deeper look on this terminal, and it turned out that it is much more interesting than I had thought before. This is my IBM 3151 terminal. I put it out on a desk and show you around a little bit. Here it consists of two parts, the monitor section and the Model M keyboard connected by a spiral cable. Zooming in a little bit, you see that the monitor has some stickers on it from the company probably that owned it previously. And at the bottom, the monitor section has a knob to regulate the brightness of the screen image, the connection to the keyboard, and also an on-off switch. From the side, yeah, it looks like a typical IBM monitor from the 1980s. But also includes not only monitor elements, but also the logic for the terminal connection. Here on the desk, I put something that was plugged in on the back of this terminal previously. It's an IBM 3151 3141 cartridge that's used for memory expansion of the terminal. But when I switched on my terminal, it constantly beeped and did not work, and it turned out that the reason is that this cartridge is obviously broken. So I put it out, I took out the cartridge, and then everything worked fine. At the back of the monitor, we can see the connections to the outside world. On the right here, I already plugged in my link to the computer. That's a serial port for linking the host computer. Then there is a second serial port in the middle, which is, I think, for the printer connection. And the third one is a slot, a cartridge slot, where you can plug in this expansion cartridge I showed you before. So I go back to the screen area, because maybe you noticed it before already. When I zoom in very much, maybe I can get it somehow. So I'm now really near to the screen, and I don't know, maybe you can see it a little bit here on the video. The screen actually has some massive burn-ins, and you even can read what was written there. So probably this monitor was switched on for a very long time, always showing the same picture or texts, and then this burn-in happened. Let's have a quick look also at the terminal, because that was the initial reason I wanted to buy this terminal, or it was the keyboard. It's actually an IBM Model M keyboard with very good quality keys, and that is really great to connect it to a PC and use it as a regular PC keyboard. Actually, I do this already anyway, but as I said, I wanted to have a second one. But when I had a look at this term, the keyboard, more in detail than at home, I noticed some keys, like the one I'm showing you now here, that's labeled reset on the left side of the space bar. And I also noticed the second key on the top right, on the bottom right of the keyboard, that's called send, at the position where normally you would have a control key on a normal keyboard. I also saw some keys like erase EOF, which actually is the abbreviation for erase to end of field. Also, key markings that flashed me were stuff like PA1 or PA2 and PA3 you see here. And the reason why it flashed me was that these keys you normally only have on IBM 3270 terminals, which are linked to IBM mainframe computer. And so I was thinking, wow, is this terminal an IBM 3270 compatible terminal actually, making it possible to hook it up to a mainframe? Then I remembered, of course, what the seller of the keyboard had told me, that it is an ASCII terminal for IBM, from IBM. Yeah, but that was strange. The keyboard nonetheless was strange. So I investigated a little bit further on that. First, I had a more detailed look at the burn-in I showed you before on the monitor screen. And I sat down with a magnifying glass and with a flashlight to decipher as much as possible from this burn-in. And I made a little printout of it here, what I could find. It says at the top of the screen 3745, then the serial number of the terminal probably, or from the connected device. Then here it says 3745 microcode, copyright IBM 1987, and some 2 lines for adapter information, maximum adapter configuration, channel adapters, line adapters, CA interface display. Here on the right I saw the words channel address, and at the bottom there was the text disk stopped. So this is what I could decipher from the burn-in from this terminal. And all this said nothing about me, told me nothing, so to say. I had no idea what the 3745 should be, so I looked it up, and it turned out that it's actually a so-called communications controller from IBM. And this is an image from Wikipedia to show you how this thing looks like. The communication controller is this big box here, you see, and it was actually used to connect an IBM mainframe with some other peripheral devices, like, for example, terminals and other stuff. Here at the front, you see it has, it seems to have floppy disk drives, and I guess the text that my terminal showed, like that said disk stopped, probably was referring to these floppy disk devices that were built into the IBM 3745. And here on this image, you also see, you will immediately recognize it, see that it has a terminal put on it, yeah, and that's actually also an IBM 3151, like the one I have. So that's probably a typical configuration. Was probably a typical configuration, an IBM 3745 box, and on top of it a 3151 terminal. And it seems that this terminal, at least what I read, was actually used to control and check the status of this IBM 3745 communications controller on which it was sitting. So I'm assuming now that my terminal also was like this, and it was standing there and was switched on 24/7, probably always showing the same text here on the on the screen. and was only used when an operator came and had to change some configuration or something like that, or check the status. So the bad thing about it is it has a big burn in here on the screen. But the good thing is that the terminal keyboard probably was not used very much and so should therefore practically be like new. Next, I had a look into the manual for this terminal. It can be easily found on the great Beat Sabers website, where I also downloaded mine from. And yeah, you see here the front page of the manual. It already says on the headline that is the IBM 3151 is an ASCII display station, actually, just as the seller had told me. And yeah, this is the so-called reference manual for this terminal. And it has a whopping 427 pages. So when I saw this 427 pages just for a simple ASCII terminal, that seemed really quite a lot to me. I had a look at the table of contents then, and yeah, as usual, IBM here describes very much in detail and in a very good way all the concepts and terms behind this terminal, and also later on all the commands that the terminal understands. So that is really well done. And here, just in the headlines of this terminal, you see such headlines like field and formatted and unformatted pages, or concepts like field attributes. And also then later on, the really big set of commands that this terminal can understand when they are given to it via the serial line. All this again made me think, well, this must be more than just a regular ASCII terminal as we know it from a Unix machine or something like that. Uh, there must be something interesting in it. Yeah, as I said, the words like field and field attributes, these are concepts used in IBM 3270 terminals that were usually connected to a mainframe. At this point, let me a little bit explain what, in my opinion, is the biggest difference between a normal terminal and a terminal connected to an IBM mainframe. A normal terminal, like for example, one that would be connected to a Unix computer, is operating in the so-called character mode. This means when you here on the left side, for example, have the terminal, which is, for example, displaying the command prompt indicated by this dollar sign, and then the user in this command shell pressing, for example, on his keyboard the letter L, then this letter L, this key press, is immediately transferred to the Unix host, and the Unix computer then registers this key press and saves it somewhere in memory for later use, and then immediately would send back an ASCII code of L to the terminal in order to show it on the terminal screen so that the user can also see what he types. Next, the user might type the letter S on his keyboard, and again, the S character code for S is immediately transferred to the Unix host. The Unix host remembers this key press also and sends back an S code to the terminal to show the echo of it on the terminal screen for the user. Then the user might press the return key on the keyboard. Again, the code for return is sent to the Unix host, and the Unix host recognizing now that the command is complete and will send first a new line character back to the terminal so that the terminal goes to the next line, and then the Unix host will execute the ls command, recognizing it by the return key, and sending then all the text, the strings for the directory listing of the current directory back to the terminal in order to display it for the user. So that's the way how a normal terminal communicates with the Unix host. So one character by one character. So for each character, for each key pressed on the keyboard, you need an interaction with the Unix host to do something with it. An IBM mainframe and its terminals communicate in a different way. The so-called 3270 terminals on IBM mainframes operate in what is called block mode and not character mode. Block mode means that on the terminal screen we see here on the left side, usually there is a kind of a the screen is normally or usually made up like a form. So it consists of fields that are for information purposes, like here on this screen to enter the number, name, and address of a person. You first have this text number and then a field, as it is called, a field for the user, enabling the user to enter something. For example, here the number of the person. Then another field, an information field called name, and then a field where the user can enter something like Norbert, and so on. So this, the whole screen is made up of fields. Fields can be either protected, so stuff like this one, where the user cannot enter anything, but when you go there with your cursor, the keyboard, the terminal will not accept your inputs. So fields that are here for pure information purposes, and other fields, unprotected fields, where you can enter something like this here. So it's working like a form, like an HTML form you might know from your browser, where you have some information fields and fields where you can enter something. So all the applications on an IBM mainframe are built up like this. In order to show these forms on the screen, the IBM mainframes sends to the terminal a description of the screen in the form of a protocol of commands that build up the screen. To build this screen, for example, the mainframe might send an order called SBA, which is called set buffer address 1000 to the terminal, meaning setting the cursor, that's the buffer address is the IBM term, let's say, for cursor position, setting the cursor position to 1000. That's the 1000th position on the screen. And this would be, for example, here where this number field starts. Then the next command would be set start field protected, which is a command that says, so please now start here a protected field. So just to indicate to the terminal what comes now has to be a protected field. And there the user should not be allowed to enter something. And then the mainframe would send a string number. Then the next command would be set buffer address to 1010. This might be, for example, here at this position. And the command start field unprotected, telling the terminal now comes an unprotected field. So something where the user can enter something, and so on. So in this way, with these commands and the text, the mainframe builds up a full screen form for the user in order to make some entries. Then the user can work on the terminal and enter the data here. This entry is then completely autonomously done by the terminal. So all the terminal controls all the cursor movements, all the key presses from the user's keyboard, and lets him fill out this form. So for this form, filling out this form, there is no need to interact with the mainframe. When the form is filled out, the user has to press a specific key, the enter key, which is the key labeled send on my 3151 terminal that you saw before. And when this key is pressed, then the terminal reads the whole screen and all the entries from the user and sends the content of these fields, of the entries of the user, back to the mainframe. So there is just an interaction one time when the screen is built up, and then a second time when the enter key is pressed, and then all the information is sent back to the mainframe. So a very big reduction of load for the mainframe actually is the background for this concept of the block mode. And now let's have a look if this 3151 terminal I bought will also support this block mode as the 3270 terminals. In order to check this, I now switched on my terminal, and after switching on at 3151 you will not see very much, practically nothing, only a cursor mark here at the top, and at the bottom there is a status line. On the right there is the cursor position, in the middle there is a text indicating that there is no link at the moment to a computer, and at the left there is a text saying block. This already sounds a lot like this terminal would be in block mode now. In order to further check, I can go to the setup mode of the terminal. There is a special key on the terminal labeled setup with the control key, and I can activate it and go to the setup menu. And you see here in 4 sections you can have quite a lot of setup possibilities. For example, here on the first page, the number of rows and columns of this terminal could be changed from 24 times 80, like I have it now, to 25 times 80, or 24 times 132 characters, 25 times 132 characters, or the 24 times 80 that I'm using. And in the second page of the setup menu, there you have the communication data, like for example the line speed. I put my terminal now to 19,200 baud or beats per second, because that seems to be the fastest that is working in a good way with my terminal. And here there is also something called operating mode, and this is now set to block. And if I press the space bar, I can cycle through the possible options. And I'm doing this now, so there is another option. You can use echo instead of block, or char instead of block, or block. That's the 3 possibilities. So the character, this char actually is the character mode which I described before for a normal Unix terminal, so that it can be used as just a normal ASCII terminal as we are used to it with Unix computers, or with a Raspberry Pi or something. The block mode is the mode that is used by mainframes, for example, for communicating with the 3270 terminals, meaning that there is no immediate interaction after a key press with the host computer. So all the entries are just sent to the computer when you press a specific key, like the send key. And now let's see how this. Now let's hook it up to our computer to see how this all works together. To connect the terminal to my PC, I used 3 very cheap parts that I just plugged together to establish this connection. The first of it is a 25-pin to 9-pin adapter to be plugged into the 3151 25-pin port at the back. Then I linked that to a so-called null modem cable, which I then connected to an RS-232 to USB adapter, so that at the end here I can have the connection to the USB port of my computer. So this is really very simple and does not involve any soldering or building of some specific interface hardware. Once this connection is established, this physical connection, it's very easy to test it if it also can transfer data from the computer to the terminal, for example. For this, I just use a simple terminal program called PuTTY in my case. And this is what it looks like when you start this on your computer. You just enter the name of your serial port on the PC of the USB port where the serial to RS-232 connector is adapted. This is in my case called COM3, and you enter the speed in beats per second of the communication. And in my case, that's 19,200. You remember that's the speed I also set up in the terminal setup menu. Okay, and then if I, with this configuration, COM3 serial port is marked and speed of 19,200 baud. When I open the terminal, I get a little black screen, where I see nothing at the moment. but in case the terminal would send something to the computer, it would be displayed here. And in the other direction, I can now enter some text here. Where you will not see it, but I'm entering on my keyboard actually, and on the other side I'm seeing it immediately displayed on my IBM 3151 screen that I have linked now to this computer. I will switch my cameras to show you how it looks like on the terminal screen. And on the IBM 3151 terminal, we see what I typed on the PC keyboard here, and we see that it is working, that the serial connection between the terminal and the computer is working. Also in the other direction it would work, so in this case I would have to switch the terminal from the block mode into character mode with the setup menu as you saw before, and then it would be possible to also transport immediately something you type on the keyboard of the terminal to the PC. And with this setup you can, for example, then hook the terminal up to the PC in order to, I don't know, use it as a command shell for the PC, or link it to a Unix terminal, to a Unix computer or Raspberry Pi, to use it as a command terminal for working with these kinds of computers. But my intention or my target was not this normal use of a terminal, but I wanted to actually see if it is really possible to use the 3151 as a terminal for an IBM mainframe. As I said, it is an ASCII terminal, which already indicates that probably this is not so easy or may not be possible really in a one-to-one way. But on the other hand, it has a block mode, and this block mode and the commands we saw before on the manual are a strong indicator that this could work. And so let's for this investigate a little bit further into the commands referring to the block mode of this IBM 3151 terminal, and see if somehow these are comparable to the IBM 3270 commands that an IBM mainframe uses with its terminals. And for that we have another look at our reference manual of the 3151. As an example, I picked the set buffer address command you already saw before and looked it up in the IBM 3151 reference manual. And actually, this set buffer address, which is a typical 3270 command, is also existing on the 3151 terminal. So on the page 658, you can then read everything about this buffer address set buffer address command, and it looks like that. It's when the ASCII terminal, when the IBM 3151 receives this sequence of bytes, namely an escape byte, which is the hex code 1B, I think, then a capital letter X, and then 2 bytes giving the row and the column of the screen position where you want to position the cursor, then the IBM terminal will go with its cursor to this screen position. So that's the set buffer address command. So as you see, it has here 4 bytes, and in this way it can position the cursor. Now let's have a look how this works on the 3270 interface. For this, I had a look at one of the many 3270 manuals. There is this manual called Data Stream Programmer's Reference, where you will find practically everything about how a data stream between an IBM mainframe and an IBM terminal looks like. And there, in this manual, there is also a description of this set buffer address command, but this time for the mainframe. And here is the format, how this looks like. And you already see, well, that's different from the 3151, at least syntactically.
because on the 3270 data stream, a hex code of 11, a byte with a hex code 11, plus a 2-byte buffer address is used to instruct the terminal to position the cursor at a specific position. And this buffer address in 2 bytes, it's not built up in the form of a row and a column as before, but it's additionally encoded in some strange way. So it's syntactically different, but semantically it's the same. So it does the same here on the 3270 as set buffer address command as the set buffer address command on the 3151. It's just looking different. I then also had a look at the second example. An important command for the terminal mode of an IBM mainframe is the start field. The start field command. You saw it before when I explained the block mode, and I had a look in the 3151 reference manual, and actually there is really also such a start field command. Let's see. It's here a little bit later in the manual. I'll go forward. Okay, just give me a second. Yeah, here it is on page 683. There is a command. It's not called start field actually, like on the mainframe, but it's called set field attribute, which is, I would say, practically the same as on the IBM mainframe. If you remember, the fields on a mainframe terminal can be defined by a start field command plus an additional information if it's a protected or unprotected field. And here on the 3151, actually, it's also possible to define such fields. And it is done with this set field attribute command. And it looks like that here we see it. If you want to instruct the 3151 to create a field and start a field, like on the IBM, comparable to the 3270 fields of the mainframe, you have to send it the following sequence. First the escape code again, then the letter or the number 3, and then 2 bytes, PA1 and PA2. And the third one, OP, which is just optionally, so I will not go into detail. So it gets 3 bytes. It is happy with 4 bytes, sorry, the escape, the 3, the first byte and the second byte. And later on, these 2 bytes are explained. So the first of these bytes is the PA1. Every beat in this byte has a specific meaning. And you see here, for example, you can, with the first byte, or define how the field looks like. So if it's a normal field or if it's a non-display field for passwords, for example, if it has normal intensity or high intensity, if it is blinking, if it is underlined, or if it's normal or reverse video. And in the second byte, which is then described later on, you can define here in the beat 2, for example, if it's a protected or unprotected field. So if you remember, the unprotected fields are just there to show some information to the user and cannot be entered, or there cannot be, the user cannot type anything there. Sorry, the protected fields, the user cannot type anything, and then the unprotected fields, they are made for the user to type something in and then send the entries of the user back to the host computer. So that's the set field attribute command. And in a similar form, this command exists also on the IBM mainframe, and there it's called start field. It also has a different syntax there with only 2 bytes, more or less, having the same effect as this set field attribute here. So with these two commands, set buffer address and set field attribute, we already can simulate quite well the behavior of a 3270 terminal. and can rely on the block mode and the field capabilities of the 3151 terminal. And then we just have to translate, so to say, the different syntactical representation or the different data stream commands from the 3270 to the 3151 commands. And then we could maybe, with such a translation, we could use the 3151 terminal also as a mainframe terminal working in 3270 mode, so to say. Yeah, and now let's have a look how we do this. First, let's have a look how it is to work with the mainframe. For that, I'm using a great IBM mainframe emulator called Hercules, for which I've written a little batch file which will just fire up this emulator and also fire up a connection to an emulated 3270 terminal. So let me just start this. It will start the IBM mainframe emulation and load a specific free operating system called VM370 on it. Then also what is started is IBM terminal emulator, which actually emulates the real hardware terminals of IBM, the 3270 terminals, in software on a PC. And today, these emulations, these terminal emulations, are of course the normal way to work with the mainframe and not with the physical, the hardware terminals that were there in the past. So this, as you see here on the login screen, this is a VM370 operating system. That's a still free operating system from IBM, but with some great additions from the IBM mainframe community. So therefore it's called VM370 Community Edition. So I'm just logging in. That's how it looks like. So you enter your login command with your user ID, and then you get into the IBM mainframe shell, so to say. That's a program called CMS, a conversational monitor system. I think it's the name of it. And with this shell, you can interact with the IBM mainframe. That's how it looks like. Just let me call a quick command called names, which will show you how it looks with these, let's say, screens or screen forms that I mentioned before. So here you see, the fields on some IBM application where you can enter names and address for user IDs. So I can, for my user ZMS user, enter this here in this field. This is a unprotected field. Can enter the username, and in the second line then the name. So this is such a typical IBM mainframe application here with the protected fields. When I want to enter something here, I get here at the bottom this symbol which says, well, you cannot enter something here because this is a protected field. I have to go to the unprotected fields with the tab key on my keyboard. I can jump from one unprotected field to the next and enter then here some tests, some test data. So, and then press one of the keys. These are the F1, F2, and F3 keys, and so on, to perform a specific function, or the enter key to enter these, or to send this whole screen to the IBM mainframe. As I said, all this is done, all this editing operation here is done completely without bothering the mainframe. You can do it just with the terminal, or in this case with the terminal emulator. So, and when you press enter, then the system does something. This is a program from me, so does not something useful yet. It's just there and print out what the user enters. So that should be enough for the demonstration of how a mainframe interaction looks like. But instead of this terminal emulator, the target would be now to connect the physical IBM 3151 terminal to the mainframe emulation. And that would be the next step now. The Hercules mainframe emulator, just like a real physical modern mainframe, offers the possibility for outside programs to connect to it via telnet. So when we start our 3270 terminal emulator and specify the telnet port of the emulated mainframe, it will establish a connection, a telnet connection to it, and then the two systems exchange their data according to the 3270 protocol, which is these commands like set buffer address, start field, etc. I showed you before. On the other hand, the 3270 terminal emulator sends the data coming from the mainframe, shows these data to the user on the computer, takes the inputs from his keyboard and sends it back to the mainframe emulator. In a similar way, I wrote a little program that is just here instead of the terminal emulation. It's a little interface program that does a similar thing, or the same thing actually. It connects to the mainframe emulation, talks the 3270 protocol with the mainframe, and instead of showing everything to the user, it translates the stream, the data stream from the mainframe, from the 3270 commands to the 3151 commands, and sends it out to the on a connection which it established with the external 3151 terminal. On the other hand, when the user then enters some data on the 3151 terminal and presses the enter key, for example, this is flowing back to this little interface program. Again, is protocol translated and sent further to the Hercules mainframe emulator. To implement this little interface program, I chose to write it in the programming language C, not C++ or something, just a plain old C, because it seemed like easy for me, and also later a port to a Raspberry Pi, for example, would be, or to Unix systems would be quite easy. But I wrote it for a Windows machine, which I have. And yeah, I'll quickly show you maybe one snippet of the code just to give you an impression how this interface program looks like. The whole program then, of course, I will put on, or is on GitHub, so you can get the full source code from there and have a look. So let's just switch over to Visual Studio Code. Yeah, and here I'm just in the middle of this translation program. Here we have a big switch statements which takes one character that was received, or one byte that was received from the host, from the mainframe emulation, from the mainframe itself, and analyzes it. So, and if this byte is, for example, the code for the SBA order, the set buffer address order, then the interface program just reads the next 2 bytes. This is the first byte, and then reading also the second byte that came from the mainframe, calculates from these 2 bytes the address, meaning the number between 0 and 1919, the address of the cursor on the screen. That should be the new cursor position. And this number between 0 and 1991 is then split up into a row and column number, by dividing it by actually 80 the terminal columns, which is the number of columns that 3151 supports. And then with these informations, it just sends out a stream of 4 bytes to the IBM 3151 terminal. These 2 bytes are the escape plus the big X, which is the command code for set buffer address according to the 3151 protocol. And this command needs two further parameters. So 2 further bytes are sent. The row that we calculated plus hex 20 and the column we calculated plus hex 20. And then these 4 bytes are immediately sent out to the 3151 terminal. Yeah. So that's what is done for this one order set buffer address. Yeah, and similar little programs or programming program parts are there for each order of this 3270 protocol. Yeah, I did not implement the full protocol. It's quite big. But yeah, the most important, let's say, most important commands that I encountered when I worked with the mainframe. And so there is still, yeah, quite some stuff to do still, like you see here in my commands here, for example. And these to-dos, yeah, are throughout the whole program. As I said, you will find the program in GitHub. Have a look at the description of this video where I will link it, of course. And as the next step, we will now look how this program is working in practice. So I will just start up my shell here, my command shell in Windows, and just let me show you how big this program is. It's called mainframe 3151. And the exe file that comes out of it is just 61 kilobytes, approximately 61 kilobytes, which is really small. And I like this with C, because when you compile such a program, you just get a really small binary. And it's okay, because it's just a little what this program does. If you do the same with JavaScript or some other stuff, yeah, you get binaries of 50 megabytes or something, because the full the full framework stuff is and programming language stuff of JavaScript is compiled into the binary too. So I chose C because I also like this small binary size. Okay, and the program is just called by executing it, and it will then establish a connection to the mainframe on the one side and establish a connection to the terminal on the other side. Let's now go over to the terminal screen to see how this works.
Okay, now I placed my camera directly in front of my terminal screen, hoping that it can be read on the video then what the screen is showing. On my PC here, which you are not seeing now, I will start now the interface program. And I've also running my Hercules simulation from before with the VM370 operating system. So I start the terminal emulator, and on the terminal itself, yes, we have the login screen of the VM370 operating system on our emulated mainframe. You see here, it's running the VM370 Community Edition. Okay, in order to connect, I will press the send key, which is what on a real 3270 terminal is called enter key. So I press the send key, and then I get this login possibility where I just type here the login command. Actually, it's called logon on VM370, and I have to provide the user ID and the password, and press enter again. Yeah, and as we saw before on the terminal emulation on the PC, now you see that this program actually is working. The interface program is working and is giving me a connection to the emulated mainframe running VM370. I will now just do the same as before. I'll just start this names command, the little program I wrote to be able to enter some user data, but it's just in the beginning state. So I will, as before, I will here enter my user ID in the fields, in the unprotected fields. I can enter also the name or a name and other data. And then with one of the function keys, or again with the send key, I can return to the calling program. You see here, of course, this is a terminal which only is monochrome, so it doesn't have the colors you saw before on the terminal emulation, because the terminal emulation in my case emulates a color 3270 terminal. But yeah, the 3151 is a monochrome terminal, and therefore everything is green. It's just two different intensities of green. The not so bright one is the normal intensity, and the brighter one is called high intensity mode. This is the same on 3270 terminals that only support monochrome monitors. Okay, so I will press enter to get back. And the system is printing me out what was received. Here, that's what my program does. Let me show you quickly another program I wrote. That's a file lister, so it's just a simple Rex program that gives me the listing of all the files I have here on my mainframe. So with the keys F7 and F8, which you cannot see now here on the video, I can step through these files and browse a file with the F2 key and go back with F3. So I'll go down now with the cursor and select a different file. So that's all just test files I made. Going back now to the terminal input. Going back now to the CMS input line again, I can log off from this system and go back again to the entry screen of the VM370. Now a different user could log on again, or in my case, I will now stop the connection of the terminal to the mainframe, and for this I made a special. There is no real key on that for the on the terminal to stop the connection. You would just switch the terminal on, but I made I put a little key combination I took to have this functionality of disconnecting from the mainframe. It's Control Shift F12, and I'm pressing this now, and the interface program just sends such a goodbye message. And here on the PC side, which you do not see now, I'm disconnected from the host and from the terminal. That was it for the IBM VM370 demonstration. Now what I will do now is show you a second demo, and I will start on my emulated mainframe here. Now a different operating system. It's also a free one, but it's a bigger operating system. It's called MVS, and I will now boot this MVS operating system on the IBM mainframe, and let's have a look if our terminal interface also works with that one. But here the boot will take several minutes, I would say, of the operating system, so I will do this now in the background and come back immediately when it's ready, when everything is ready to be connected to our 3151 terminal. Okay, I'm back at the terminal. In the meantime, on my emulated mainframe, the operating system MVS version 3.8 is ready and booted up, and it is ready to connect, to accept connections from terminals. And we will do this now and connect to it by running the mainframe 3151 interface program here on the PC, and which you cannot see now. Now I'm starting this program, and we see here the logon screen of the MVS operating system. It's running, here you see it, it's the MVS 3.8J turnkey system. It's actually called TK5 minus, which is let's say a distribution of this MBS operating system, which is very user-friendly, at least for mainframe terms. So I will now log on here with the username Herx03 and now enter the password. And press enter again, and after a welcome message and some additional fortune cookie, I will get into the menu of the MBS operating system. It's it's the menu system on a tool called ISPF. Here the MBS operating system is very much menu driven, but also has a command line like the VM370 operating system. But I just booted up this system to show you a little bit more screen possibilities of this terminal emulation. Here one of the menu items we can use is called RPF. Sorry, I'm going back. I was wrong. I will take the so-called TSO applications, item M, and then here in these item M, there is a thing called IMON370 system monitor, which gives us some quite nice possibilities. I choose the option 3 and then get this menu selection. First, let's go to the terminal, to this tutorial for this IMON monitor program. So I have to enter a question mark as a command or as a selection. So I put here this question mark, and so here we get then another index for help topics, and I switch to the next pages. Yeah, and one of these pages is, for example, what we see here. It's a testing of the colors and intensity modes, and also the so-called extended highlighting modes. Just to demonstrate you that all these specific special modes are also supported by my little translation program between the 3270 and the 3151 protocol. So we see here on the screen a line with high intensity, a line with normal intensity. The colors, of course, are not shown, that's clear, because it's a monochrome terminal, but what is shown is what is the so-called extended highlighting options. Like here, it's a field that has a blinking as its characteristic, or a field that has reverse video, or a field that has underscore mode switched on. So this is also supported by this terminal emulation program, and then we also see a little overview of the available characters on this terminal. Yeah, you will see here that the letter characters actually are not, like in ASCII on a mainframe, are not a sequence of characters without any holes in it, but actually there are certain blocks of characters, of letters, sorry, that are in this character set, which are not adjacent to each other. And I also had some special characters mapped here, the special characters from the terminal mapped to the so-called ASCII character encoding of the IBM mainframe. Now, just to let you see the complete character set that is available. Yeah, that's it, more or less. So with F3 I can go back to the monitor and can then choose another option to monitor stuff on this MBS operating system. I'm choosing now option G. Just as an example, there's not much to see, and I go out of the of this option, and then go back, enter the end command to go back to my ISPF menu, and now enter also the end command to jump out to my shell, so to say, and here I can log off from the MBS system, and I will get back to the login screen again. And again with my special character, keystroke combination, Control-Shift F12, I can disconnect from the IBM mainframe and come back to the terminal screen itself. Okay, that's it for a little demonstration of this interface program, to see that with this program you can now use the IBM 3151 terminal that was initially an ASCII terminal to be used on stuff like an IBM 3745 communication controller. You can use this terminal now directly on an IBM mainframe and use it like a 3270 mainframe terminal. That's it. If you want to try out the interface program, you can go to my GitHub page or to my website. There you will find the source code for the program, a Windows binary, and much more information. I put the links down in the description to this video. Thanks again for watching, and bye-bye.